Before we get to our keynote speaker tonight, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors for their support of our program tonight. Our sponsors are listed in your program. I hope you'll thank them if you get a chance. They are our presenting sponsors, Daughtridge Sales and Universal Leaf North America. Our partnering sponsors are Eastern Hydraulic and Power Transmission, Express Employment Professionals, Doubletree Hotel in Rocky Mount, and Progressive Benefit Solutions. Without their support, we wouldn't be able to do events like this. Please please join me in showing our appreciation for their support tonight. And now for her comments and the introduction of our special guest tonight, I'm going to turn the program over to Christina Siegel, President of the Golden East Society for Human Resources Management. Christina?
Thank you. It's my pleasure tonight to introduce Congresswoman Renee Ellmers. Mrs. Ellmers has served in the U.S. House of Representatives since January 2011. She serves the 2nd District on the House Committees on Agriculture, Foreign Affairs, and Small Business, where she also chairs the subcommittee on Healthcare and Technology. She's a registered nurse and works with her husband as the clinical director of the Trinity Wound Care Center in Dunn. When she's not in D.C., Mrs. Ellmers spends time with her husband and son and also volunteers at her church. So please join me in welcoming Congresswoman Renee Ellmers.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. It is always wonderful to be back in Rocky Mount, and thank you so much for this opportunity to come and speak to you tonight on these very, very pivotal issues that we as a community are facing here, but that our country is facing across this great country of ours. The Golden East chapter, thank you so much for the work that you're doing with the Society of Human Resources Management. I do want to take the opportunity to introduce also some of my staff that are with me. Al Litton, who many of you know in this area, who is my chief of staff. And we work very closely together. We have a wonderful team. And I just can't say enough about my staff, really. They work very, very hard. They help me tremendously. We do work as a team, and we try very hard to fix the problems that we're faced with. I also have with me tonight Ms. Pat Fitzgerald, who is my district director, and her background is actually in HR. So when Pat and I became friends in Dunn, we've been friends for a number of years, working together in the community, working for the Dunn Chamber of Commerce. You know, when I was back a civilian back in Dunn, we worked very hard together, and I knew what a good, hardworking person she was. And when I had the opportunity to ask her to be part of my staff, I knew she was going to be just a tremendous asset. And she is, again, doing a great job for all of us. You know, one of the things that I'm going to talk about, of course, you know, small business, working in Dunn with my husband's practice, we're small business owners. We understand what everyone in this country is facing who are small business owners. And all of the issues, all of the economy issues that we're faced with. Small business has held it together. We have done everything that we could do to make it work. Just like in our homes, we've cut back in this economy as much as we can. We are holding it. We are going with it. Our businesses are doing the same. We're doing more with less. We've had to make cuts. Unfortunately, that means that we've also had to let staff go. And as a small business owner, we have had to face that, and there's nothing that's more heartbreaking than when you have someone who has come to work for you and is part of your business family, and then you have to say to them, I've got to let you go. Well, right now, our country is faced with those issues as well. And over the last week or so in Washington was very active in speaking about this issue. One of the things that I believe wholeheartedly, and I'm going to start right off by talking about this, the last thing we need to do right now is raise taxes on anyone. Our business owners are those individuals that are being targeted. And if they are added, if one more mandate, one more tax is added to what they are already dealing with, more jobs are going to be lost. It is simply not the solution. We have mounting debt in this country. We are $14 trillion in debt. We owe other countries for that debt. Of every dollar that's spent, 42 cents of it is borrowed. China is our largest holder of debt right now. We simply cannot continue on that path. We cannot continue to pay for things that we just don't have the money for. And we've been cutting and cutting and cutting spending. We've been pulling back on regulations. We've got to empower our businesses. We cannot add taxation. We have to remove the uncertainty. We have to cut back on the burdensome regulations and the mandates. The uncertainty that I hear this across the district. I held a small business roundtable in Clayton about 2 months ago. It was on my break, or I say break, but that just means my week back in the district about 2 months ago. There were 40 business owners that came. Some are from Rocky Mount. Overwhelmingly, the issues that I heard was cut back on regulation, cut back on taxation, cut back and remove our uncertainty so that we can get hiring again. We have no access to capital. We cannot get the fund. We cannot go to our bank and take out a loan. These are holding our businesses back from hiring. What better way to turn this country around than for the private sector to be creating jobs again so that those individuals are out spending money, which will create more jobs, and it will create more jobs and more, and this is the way that we will turn this country around. It's not going to come from a Washington solution. I can't create a job. All I can do is help you to be able to create jobs. And that's what I'm doing, and I'm fighting very hard. Now, last week, Small Business Committee heard from the Treasury Secretary, Timothy Geithner. And the reason we asked him to small business was there's a small business lending fund that's been available now for about 9 months. There have been 844 applications for that funding. $30 billion has been put aside for this. Not one application has been filled. We asked him why. He danced around the issue, blamed it on bank regulators, never really gave us straight answers, but talked about what we needed to do in the future. He talked about how we need to come together as a bipartisan group, which I am all for. And we need to put forward a comprehensive plan, financial plan, that includes tax increases. So I questioned him on that. And he got, I wouldn't say defensive, but he did come a little unglued. Because, you know, he talks about it only being about 2%, and we know that already. We know that about 2% of those who make $250,000 or more make up this country. But the fact of the matter is he's wrong. And I told him that. And you would be amazed at the attention I got to just saying something that's just basic common sense in Washington. It was pretty amazing. I also had the opportunity this past weekend to give the weekly Republican address. It was a big honor for me to be asked to do that. And I was able to lay out to the American people the fact that the Republican conference has a plan of action to do all of these things. If you go online to American Job Creators, or you go to my website, elmers.house.gov, there's a link there. We are talking about creating jobs. We need you to go there. We need you to click on that icon, American Job Creators. We need to hear from you. You as business owners are the ones who know specifically what it is that Washington has done that makes it impossible for you to feel the certainty that you need right now. I need you to put your name in there. I need you to tell us what your business is, and I need you to tell us how we have to get out of the way. And we will use that information. We are also working diligently to become energy independent again, drilling for oil rather than sitting back and watching our gas prices skyrocket. We have got to bring those gas prices down. We were having the conversation at the table just moments ago, talking about how all of these things are adding up in our lives. It's costing more to go to the grocery store. It's costing more to put gas in our cars. You know, it's just adding up, and we cannot sustain it. We've got to become energy independent. We can do it. Think of the jobs that will be created here in North Carolina alone if we're doing the drilling that we need to do. You know, many people in Washington talk about these issues. And then they come up with solutions like, again, raising taxes. Those aren't solutions. Those are just adding to the problems. Our president put a plan together, $1 trillion worth of stimulus spending, when you add it all together. It has done nothing. No jobs have been created. We are still in a deep recession. We probably would be coming out of it if the market had been able to deal with itself, because the market does that. The market rebounds, the market moves on. But because of that excessive spending that was added, we've added to our debt, which is only added to the interest we're paying those other countries, which is making it even harder to come out of what we have. And there again, that's why we're working so hard. You know, one of the other issues that we're faced with, of course, is where we're going from here as far as our budget issues. I know many of you know that we're dealing right now with the thought of raising the debt ceiling. I'm not in favor of that. I don't want that, and I know many of you are not in favor of it as well. So there are negotiations that are going on. There are many things that we're looking at to cut the amount of debt that we have. We're trying hard to see how we can use this. How can we get our heads around raising the debt ceiling? The only way we can is if we make significant enough cuts that we actually decrease the amount of debt. We put caps on it, come up with a balanced budget amendment. There are plenty out there. We just need to decide which one we're going to do and then get it through. But if we don't have those things, if those things that we're looking at adding on to that debt ceiling increase are not significant enough, I just simply can't vote for it, because I am not going to add to the debt that we have. And that's not just for us. That's for our children. Because what we're passing on to them, they will not be able to deal with. It is becoming unsustainable. And we are coming down to the line. We're coming down to the line on many issues. Medicare is one of them. I'm looking out in the audience at a kind of a wide age range of individuals. And I know that many of you have heard of the Ryan budget plan for 2012. What that budget plan puts in place is an answer for the future. It's gotten a lot of negative press. Some of it is our own responsibility because we didn't put the plan out there in the right way. We talked about issues that had more to do with balancing the budget rather than talking about Medicare as individuals see it. You know, I've paid into Medicare my entire life. I started getting a paycheck at age 16, and I know many of you have as well. You've been paying into it every paycheck since that time. You deserve that benefit back. That Social Security, that's the way folks here in this country look at it. It's a very personal issue. But the fact of the matter is that when the government-run healthcare plan was put in place, it destroyed Medicare as we know it. It took it apart. Let me tell you some of the things that exist in it right now. One, $500 billion has been taken out of Medicare with the government takeover of healthcare. $500 billion. In place, they've put a 15-person panel in that will choose and decide what kind of health care you'll receive. Now let me just lay it out for you. What does that mean? If you're on Medicare, let's just say it's your mom. We'll use an individual. We'll say it's your mom. Your mom's 80 years old. Your mom is a very active woman. She walks 2 miles a day. She takes care of herself. She has more energy than any of us. She plays bridge twice a week. She falls and breaks her hip. The physician will see that patient, and then we'll have to submit a request to this 15-person panel to see whether or not that surgery can be done. Now let's talk about the panel. 15 people. They do not have to have a healthcare background. They're going to make a 6-figure salary. The term is 6 years, can be renewed for another 6. So this could potentially be a 12-year term. And they're going to be the deciding factor. There is no appeal process. Once the decision is made, the decision goes down. There is no oversight. They are an independent panel working amongst themselves, deciding your health care if you have Medicare. That information will be passed on to your physician. Imagine sitting down and talking to that woman, that 80-year-old who's been active her entire life, and her family, and that physician having to walk in and say, I can't do your surgery. All I can do is put you on pain medication for the rest of your life, and you have no choice in the matter. That is what has been put in place. That is why we are working so hard to make sure the American people understand that the Ryan budget removes all of that and puts in place a system that those of us who are younger will have choices in Medicare. If you're 55 or older, nothing changes for you. The numbers are there. We have protected Medicare for you. If you're younger than that, you get to make a choice of which insurance plan will be providing your Medicare. There are choices that you get to take. Right now, you have no choice. You receive the Medicare that's available, and that's it. Those are the things, and as simple as that sounds, that will create competition amongst the insurance companies. It will bring the cost down, and it will move forward, and we will be able to keep Medicare in place into the future. Because as it is right now, and the Medicare trustees themselves have told us, by about 2024, Medicare will cease to exist if we don't make changes. I know that's a tough message to listen to, but it is the truth. And I need you to understand it, because what has been put in place is so incredibly dangerous that I just simply cannot stand in front of you and tell you anything less. Just like I can't sit as a nurse and tell a patient that even though they have a diagnosis of cancer, that we're just not going to think about that today. We're just going to do something else. We've kicked the can down the road long enough. It's time to deal with the problem because we are simply running out of time. And again, I know that's a strong message, but again, it is the truth. there are some other things that I'm working on, things that as small business owners that we understand. And in healthcare, again, healthcare has been a big target. That's the whole reason I'm there. Physicians right now, physicians in hospitals are putting in IT systems as part of another mandate that exists in the government takeover, which is a good thing. Health IT is wonderful. It improves upon healthcare. It's electronic medical records, electronic prescriptions. The problem is that there are penalties involved. Over the years, physicians and hospitals can be assessed penalties if they're not doing it exactly the right way. If they're not reporting, and then what I mean by that is if they're not reporting the correct data. So what I have put in place is some legislation to pull back on those penalties. Because, quite honestly, there are some physician offices that just simply can't afford, because it's a quite costly expense. It can cost you $40,000. And for a physician who's looking at retiring in 5 years, that's just an amount of money that they cannot spend. So we're looking at some very common sense issues here so that we can make sure that our healthcare providers stay in place. Right now, there are many physicians who are closing their doors. There are many physicians who are decreasing the number of Medicare patients that they take, or just cutting Medicare completely out. Same with Medicaid. That is very dangerous for our healthcare system, because we already know that we need more doctors, especially in rural areas. But those are the ones who are being so incredibly affected. Our hospitals, the same thing. We have to make some tough choices, and I'm ready to do that. Those of us who've been in healthcare have known for a long time that there are many things that need to be reformed. But it needs to take place in the private sector, not from some government Washington bureaucrat. And that's unfortunately what we have right now, and that's why we're fighting so hard to pull back on it. But again, as far as business goes, I do want to ask you, reach out to us. I gave you my website, elmers.house.gov. I've given you American Job Creators. These are the things that we need to work with, because when America works best, it's working, it's prospering, it's providing. We should be the top innovators in the world, and somewhere we've lost our way. And when Washington is listening to the American people, that's when we're at our best. We can do this, but we have to work together, every one of us. It doesn't matter whether we're Republican or Democrat. We've just finally got to come to the decision that we cannot continue on this path any longer, and that we've got to turn it around. We're making it. I told you that. But our children aren't going to be able to have that choice. I want my son and your children to be able to have the same opportunities that we have had. And if we continue on this path, they will not. They will have to make choices that we've not had to make. Their lives are going to be harder and more expensive simply because of what we're doing today. We can't pass that on to them. We've got to stop it now. In closing, I just, again, want to say that I know some of these messages that I'm bringing you today aren't pretty. But we are working very hard in Washington. I know that many times it seems like not much is getting done. You flip on the TV, you flip on the news channel, and it just looks like nothing happens except a whole lot of arguing. Well, that's not really the case. We do debate the issues, and we are passionate about our beliefs. But at the end of the day, when we're walking off that House floor, we're saying hello to each other. We're asking, how are you? We're friendly. There's no reason to be otherwise. I may disagree wholeheartedly on their political philosophy, but there's no reason that we have to be ugly to each other. We can solve these problems. And we are committed to doing that. I work day and night in Washington, and so does my staff, here, at home, and there, because we're ready to solve these problems and to keep our children from having to face them. I'm going to continue to work very hard. I hope that you will know that. I hope that you will keep me in your prayers. I hope that you will keep this country in your prayers, our president, and all of the elected officials. Because if we just make that decision to come together and solve issues, then we're all going to be better off, and our children will be better off. We'll have a much stronger America, and we'll stop fighting about these little issues that are meaningless. I'm ready to do it, and I think you're ready to hear it, and I think you're ready to go along with me. So again, when the American people are engaged, we get things done. So I ask you again, be a part of the solution. Be a part of the solution with me and my colleagues in Washington, because we've got to do this for our children. Thank you so much for listening tonight.
When she was introduced, you heard Christina say that in her spare time, she enjoys spending time with her husband and her son when the Congresswoman is able to be home. And I'm sure those times are very precious. And on behalf of all of us, I want to thank you for taking one of those precious nights and spending it with us here in Rocky Mount. Join me one more time in thanking the Congresswoman. I want to thank our sponsors once again. I want to thank all of you for attending tonight. We're only 2 days away from a wonderful holiday weekend. I hope you enjoy it. God bless you all, and good night.